My name is Elizabeth Bellamy, and I am 25 years old. It was the morning of the single most important day of my life. I woke up at 5 a.m. and couldn't get back to sleep. My interview at Yale School of Medicine was only 14 hours away. I devoted 3 whole years of my life to building toward that one moment. The library late at night, the volunteer work at the free clinic, the MCAT I had to retake, funded by myself through double shifts at a diner. Everything I had was riding on that interview, and I was fully aware of it. Lying in the dark of my childhood bedroom, I stared at the ceiling, mentally walking through every question they could throw at me, whispering my answers under my breath as though in prayer. I possessed exactly one blazer, a good one, a charcoal gray wool blend jacket I'd picked up secondhand from a consignment store 2 towns away, perfectly pressed, and hanging on the back of my closet door like a suit of armor. I'd had it dry cleaned the prior week and tried it on 4 separate times just to be sure it still fit right. That blazer was the most professional item I owned, and I'd guarded it as though it were made of gold. My sister Vanessa, 22, still lives at home, and she has never, not once, been happy about anything I've achieved. Every acceptance letter, every scholarship, every good grade I got was met by her with silence, sarcasm, or some petty cruelty disguised as a joke. We hadn't been close since childhood, but I'd learned to keep my distance and my mouth shut. I thought distance would be enough. I was wrong. I discovered what she had done at 7:30 that morning. After breakfast, I walked into my room and immediately smelled it, a sharp, chemical wrongness. The blazer still hung on its hanger, but when I raised it toward the window light, I spotted the harm. Pale, irregular splotches covering the left shoulder, the lapel, and running down the front panel. Bleach. She had poured bleach onto my blazer. Not spilled, but poured. There was simply no other explanation. The pattern was too intentional, too complete. Someone had come into my room and ruined the one thing I most needed on the one day I needed it. My hands were shaking as I went downstairs. Vanessa sat at the kitchen table eating cereal, not even glancing up. My mother stood at the counter topping off her coffee. Holding up the blazer, I asked, as calmly as I could manage, "Did you do this?" Vanessa shrugged and claimed she had no idea what I was talking about. I turned to my mother. She glanced at the blazer, then at me and said, "Elizabeth, stop making a scene. It's only a jacket. You're being dramatic." My father came in from a hallway, caught those final words, and didn't even ask what had happened. He just said, "Your mother's right. Don't stir things up before a big day." That was it. That was the sum total of their reaction to their daughter's blazer being wrecked the night before the most critical interview of her life. Don't cause a scene. Don't provoke anything. As if I were the problem standing in that kitchen. I went back upstairs, sat on the edge of my bed clutching that ruined jacket, and let myself cry for exactly 10 minutes. I let myself feel every ounce of it. The fury, the embarrassment, the sorrow of realizing that the people who should have protected me had spent my whole life looking away while one of their children harmed the other. 10 minutes. Then I stopped. I pressed the blazer. I steamed it. I hung it up again and studied it hard. The bleach stains weren't vanishing. The fibers were permanently changed. The gray had become pale, washed-out patches that looked almost marbled in the light. There was no concealing it. I could either walk into that interview wearing something damaged or not walk in at all. And not walking in was never an option. I wore it. I put on my white blouse, my black trousers, my one decent pair of heels, and I donned that stained, bleached, ruined blazer as if it were the most intentional choice I had ever made. Because by the time I buttoned it and looked in the mirror, I had decided that it was. I drove 2 hours to New Haven by myself. I walked into the admissions building alone. I sat in the waiting area among 7 other applicants, all in crisp pressed suits and expensive blazers, and I sat upright and still, refusing to apologize for what I wore with my eyes, my posture, or my expression. When they called my name, and I entered the interview room, the dean of admissions looked up from my file. His gaze moved to my blazer. He looked at it for a brief moment, then down at my last name on the folder before him, and his expression shifted. The dean was Dr. Harold Whitfield, who had overseen admissions at Yale School of Medicine for 19 years. I knew that because I had researched every possible person who might sit across from me in that room. I believed in preparation. I believed in knowing your audience. What I hadn't prepared for was the way he slowly set my folder down, leaned back in his chair, and spoke those 3 words like he was verifying something he had already guessed. "Wait, you're her." I didn't flinch. Holding his gaze, I replied, "That depends on who you're looking for, sir." He smiled. Not the polite, professional smile interviewers use to relax candidates, but a genuine one, the kind that reaches the eyes. He turned my folder around and pushed it across the table toward me, pointing at my name. Then he pulled out a second document from a manila envelope beside his desk and set it next to my application. It was a letter of recognition from the American Medical Student Research Foundation. My research paper on healthcare access disparities in rural communities had won their National Undergraduate Award 8 months earlier. I had submitted it under my full name, Elizabeth Bellamy. He had remembered the name. Dr. Whitfield had served on the Foundation's selection committee that year. He told me he had defended my paper in a room full of people who wanted to pick something safer and more traditional. He said my work had a quality he rarely saw in undergraduate submissions. It read like someone who had truly lived inside the problem they were writing about, not just examined it from afar. He was right. I had grown up 40 minutes from the county with the lowest physician-to-patient ratio in the state. I knew exactly what I was writing about. We talked for 53 minutes. The interview had been scheduled for 30. He questioned me about my research, about the free clinic, about why medicine rather than public policy, about what kind of doctor I planned to become. I answered each question honestly and thoroughly, without performance, without the rehearsed language I'd practiced at 5 a.m. in the dark. About 20 minutes in, he nodded toward my blazer and said simply, "That took courage, coming in here today." I glanced down at the bleach patches on my lapel and said, "It took something, sir." "I'm not sure courage is the right word for wearing the only choice you have left." He scribbled something on his notepad. I didn't ask what. When I left that building and returned to my car, I sat in the driver's seat for a long while without starting the engine. My hands had stopped trembling. Something had changed during those 53 minutes, something I hadn't anticipated. I had entered carrying humiliation, and I left carrying something else entirely. Not triumph, not yet. Just steadiness, the quiet kind that comes from realizing that what someone did to break you ended up being the very thing that made you stand out. 6 weeks later, I received my acceptance letter from Yale School of Medicine with a full merit scholarship. I was one of 93 students chosen from over 4,000 applicants. I read the letter 3 times, standing at my mailbox in the cold. Then I went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. My mother came down first. I slid the letter across the table without a word. She read it, and her face did something complicated, hovering between pride and the particular shame of someone who knows they don't deserve to feel it. She said, "Elizabeth, I always knew you'd," and I said, "Please don't." Not harshly, just clearly. She stopped. My father read it next. He shook my hand. That was the most he had ever known how to offer. And I accepted it for what it was, nothing more. Vanessa never said a single word about the blazer. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. I didn't need it anymore. What she had intended as destruction had become the most memorable thing about me in that interview room. The stain she had poured onto my jacket made me unforgettable. She had tried to take something from me and had unintentionally handed me the detail that made a 19-year admissions veteran remember my face. I kept the blazer. It's hanging in my closet at my New Haven apartment right now, 2 blocks from campus. I look at it sometimes before a hard day, before a difficult exam, before a clinical rotation I know will test me, before any moment when I need to recall what I am truly made of. I don't wear it anymore. I don't need to. It already fulfilled its purpose. Some people spend their whole lives trying to make you smaller. They pour bleach on your armor the night before your battle because they cannot stand the thought of watching you win. What they don't understand, what Vanessa never understood, what my parents still don't fully grasp, is that those who are destined to get somewhere will find a way to get there wearing whatever they have left. I walked into Yale with a ruined blazer and walked out with everything I had ever worked for. And I did it alone, the same way I had always done everything that mattered. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button right now because every week on this channel, we share real stories of people who refuse to stay broken. You won't want to miss what comes next.